Welcome back to another episode of Your Body Speaks. We are in for a treat today. I have a really good friend of mine, Dr. Kate Davis, on the podcast with me today. So I am so excited for you guys to be able to hear from her, hear what she's up to, hear all the fun things she's doing. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brook. I'm so excited to be on your show. And as you said, we are really good friends. So I feel like this is going to be a super fun episode.
It's going to be really fun, guys. One thing I do want to tell you right out the get-go is Kate and I can be very sarcastic with one another. We have a lot of fun. We joke. We make, all kinds of fun together. So if it starts getting a little like that, just know that we are not taking jabs at each other. We do really love each other dearly. So, Kate, I know your beginning story. I want our listeners to get to know who you are, how you ended up as Dr. Kate, what you're doing now, and all of that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much again, Dr. Brook, for having me. I got into functional medicine because of my own healing journey. I had severe constipation and bloating issues. I actually went 13 days without a single bowel movement when this first started, and nothing medical doctors offered me helped. I was 24 at the time. I was young. I was healthy. I was a former D1 athlete, so it just didn't make any sense to me. I wasn't overweight. I ate fairly healthy, at least I thought so at the time. And so it was just a really confusing time for me. But, I was given two terrible options: a drug I'd have to take for the rest of my life or surgery to remove my intestines. And that was all they told me. Luckily enough, I left that doctor, never went back, and I was blessed to be able to find, a doctor who did some myofascial release in my abdomen. And I swear, Dr. Brook, I lost about 10 pounds that night. Like, it was
Ooh,
such a relief
girl.
to be able, yeah, it was such a relief to be able to go to the bathroom again, because out of those 13 days, so almost 2 weeks without a single bowel movement, I was on Miralax for 11 of those days, and it did
Oh
not
my
work.
gosh.
And God bless the chiropractic world that I found this doctor who was a massage therapist before he became a doctor. And so he was really well versed in organ manipulation, myofascial release in the abdomen, which is stuff that I do on my patients today. Even the virtual ones, I teach them how to do it, get their spouses
Mhm.
involved, to release that fascia in the gut, that connective tissue that is between all the layers of our muscle and skin and organs. And it was just life-changing for me. And so this is why I'm so passionate about helping people in this area, because I remember being in that place, not knowing what was going on in my body, why I was feeling so terrible when everyone around me seemed completely healthy and fine. And so after that experience, I completely overhauled my diet. I went paleo, gluten-free, dairy-free. And as long as I stuck to that restrictive diet, I was about 90% better. But anytime I veered off, all the symptoms would come back, bloating, constipation, acid reflux. It was just horrible. I couldn't really go out to eat with friends unless there was, a gluten-free, dairy-free menu, which I know you've had experience with as well. And
Mhm.
so it's just so frustrating when you just want to live your life and you just can't do that. I dealt with this for almost a decade. I had a really stressful life event happen about 8-9 years after this. And it just exacerbated, all my symptoms came back, and the diet wasn't helping anymore. This diet that I thought cured my gut issues just kept the symptoms at bay. And I hear
Mm.
that from a lot of people, and I'm sure you do as well, where a diet just isn't enough for most people, especially in America. Our food is just absolute garbage here, unfortunately. So,
Totally.
and oh, go ahead.
No, I was just like, yuck. It is so yucky, our food supply system.
Yeah, it's terrible. But I had a good friend from school come into town, and I was telling her everything that was going on. She was like, Kate, stressful life events can trigger a lot of health issues and gut issues in people. We need to get some testing done, because I think you either have parasites or Lyme disease or both. And so you did some testing, and it revealed a massive parasite infection. I mean, I was infested. I passed a 3 foot long parasite. It was gigantic. It looked like a little snake in my body. It was horrifying to think to myself, where the heck was this living? I know I'm almost 6 feet tall. And so doctors have always said, well, you have a lot of empty space in your abdomen. But seriously, this thing was gigantic. And you had hundreds of these things come out of me. I was shocked, because you learn, I have a microbiology degree from undergrad. You learn in your parasitology class that, oh, this only exists in third world countries. Don't have to worry about it in America. That is so far from the truth. And so
Right.
after I passed this 3 foot long parasite, all of my symptoms started to disappear, and I felt like a completely completely brand new person. I felt so different. I was going to the bathroom 2 to 3 times a day. I lost about 25 pounds. I looked healthy. I felt healthy. I was super energetic. Before that, I was on the verge of an autoimmune disease, like joints swelling up out of nowhere for no reason. And so I'm just so grateful that my friend came into town and was able to figure out what the heck was going on with me, because I know, not a lot of people are that lucky to figure it out before it became a full-blown issue. And so since then, I've helped hundreds of women heal from chronic gut issues. And it's just so amazing to see those changes in people.
Okay, I love that. I mean, from a very young age, 24, to be experiencing these symptoms. And that's a time, that's like a prime in your life, right? Where you should just be able to eat what you want, do what you want, all the things. But here you were as a young 24-year-old dealing with all these problems, having all these issues, and then having 8 to 9 years later that triggering event that restarted everything again. And it's what I talk about a lot, and I know you know this too, is the body. There's 4 pillars of health: physical, spiritual, emotional, mental. So we can have emotional, mental strains that exacerbate, draw things to the surface, or a physical stress, maybe a car accident or something that happens, that we're just like, well, this wasn't an issue before, but it only becomes an issue because it was hiding under the surface.
Mhm.
You having that triggering event 8 to 9 years prior to that, finding out that it was a parasitic infection, really brought to the surface that there was more underlying and going on than a gluten-free, dairy-free diet would have ever corrected on its own, or a paleo diet.
Oh, absolutely. And people, I want to touch on two things that you said, because number one is that everyone always goes to diet first. They're
Mhm.
like, oh, well, it must be my diet. This
Mhm.
must be why I'm feeling the way that I am.
Yep.
And like you said, there's so many underlying issues. It wasn't just parasites. I mean, I had so many things going on in my body. I had leaky gut, really bad leaky gut, food sensitivities, gallbladder dysfunction, low stomach acid, a fungal overgrowth, mold toxicity. I had so much going on. And if you just target one thing, you're going to miss all that other stuff going on. And that's what I've seen with people is,
Amen.
yeah, they just target diet. They're like, oh, well, it must be just what I'm eating. Or, oh, as long as I don't eat gluten, I feel fine. And I'll look at them and say, but do you want to eat gluten? Like, and
No.
everyone does, it's like, you don't
No.
want to go the rest of your life not being able to eat pizza with your friends or getting a croissant. Obviously, we want to limit that stuff and try to go as good quality as we can with sourdough and things like that. But you should be able to live your life at an 80-20 rule. And so that's number one that I wanted to cover. But another thing you brought up that is so important that I feel most people don't talk about is stress. I mean, this is shown
Mhm.
in research, the profound impact that chronic years of stress has on your body. There's so much research out there. You guys go look it up. It will blow your mind. The fact that our
Mhm.
body stores these trapped emotions and stressful life
Mhm.
events and trauma that happen in our body. I mean, just that book, The Body Keeps the Score, is so fascinating. If you've never read that book, it's kind of heavy, so maybe small bits at a time, but it just shows you how trauma really just gets stored in your organs. You look at Chinese medicine and they talk about how the liver, if you have unrepressed or unresolved anger issues, it'll affect
Mhm.
your liver. If you've got bitterness or unforgiveness or resentment, it affects your gallbladder. Grief will hit the lungs. There's so many different things that are just so fascinating about the human body. And stress has also been shown in research to break down that gut lining, to create
Yeah.
leaky gut. So if
Yeah.
you're looking at research, they're never going to put leaky gut in the article because that's just what we call it to make it easy. You'll look for increased intestinal permeability. And that's something
Mhm.
you do not want because it is the precursor to all autoimmune disease. Your gut influences so many systems in your body, your hormones, your mental health, your brain health, so many different things that we don't want to get to that point where we just can't handle stress and we're at the point where maybe we're having really severe anxiety or panic attacks or things like that. And so really nervous system down regulation and teaching people how to, in spite of stressful life events that happen, how to manage and mitigate that stuff is so incredibly important in the healing process. And that's why I talk a lot about brain health,
Mhm.
in my practice too, because of that gut brain connection, but also because I had a huge background in neurology. I was treating concussions and chronic pain using neuro in my practice before I got into functional medicine. So the combination of both is just so life changing for so many people. And so I just wanted to touch on those two things because there's a really great point you made.
Amen. Yeah, stress is such a huge driver to so much of the chronic conditions people experience. And
Mm-hmm.
I would even, and I'm going on a limb here and don't shoot me, don't shoot the messenger, But it's also one of those things you can do all of the cleanses, all the parasite detoxes, gut, brain, all the things. But if you're still dealing with unresolved stress that you're not addressing, you may find yourself getting some results, but not getting to the full picture. And I'm sure you've experienced, and we both have really difficult patient cases where patients may not be getting the results that they could be getting, but we know, guys, you're just sitting in a pool of stress. This is really
Yeah.
impacting your system, and it's hard to make progress because we go 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and it's this constant cycle. And so stress is a huge factor that people really do need to address.
Oh, 100%. And it's not to make people feel like they're being gaslit by doctors when they say, "Oh, it could just be stress." That is a part of the puzzle.
Right.
We're not just,
Good point.
downplaying your symptoms,
Good
and I
point.
think a lot of people just think that when doctors say, "Oh, it's just stress." And granted there are a lot of doctors who don't look further. They just say, "Oh, well, you're
Yeah.
stressed. Once your stress calms down, you'll be fine." But they don't give you any tools or any ways to actually mitigate it. And so that's when people can get in real trouble because, stress and your immune system function like a seesaw. So if
Mhm.
stress goes up and it stays there, your immune system can't turn on. It can't fight off infections. It can't keep your body healthy. And that's when those chronic infections like parasites or mold or, fungal overgrowth in the gut or opportunistic bacterial infections in the gut really just take over. And all of a sudden, you go from a healthy 24-year-old to someone who can't go to the bathroom for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's just this combination of so many different layers and so many different factors. So you really have to look at every piece of the puzzle.
Amen. Oh, so good. Yeah. Great point. Is there are doctors who just say, "Oh, it's stress," and just write it off. Don't look further. We are not those doctors. I know you guys know that, for those of you who are listening. So I want to transition off the stress component and kind of coming back into the parasite cleanses that I talked about before, where you can do a cleanse. You were very successful in going through your cleanse and getting your body healed from all of this stuff. There's a lot of people that are trying to do these kind of cleanses that are not getting guidance and not having proper follow through with practitioners and not doing it the right way. And so there's a lot of trendiness going on in social media. You just look up different things, gut health, gut cleanse, da da da, right? But we know that these can be actually very, very dangerous if not done correctly. So, why can jumping straight into these cleanses or heavy metal detoxes be so dangerous for somebody?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's such a timely conversation because it is such a trendy thing that people are, jumping on and
Yeah.
just getting so into nowadays. And what you have to realize is that I get this question the most because obviously on my Instagram page, I talk the most about parasites because that was my story. And it's the only infection that you can visibly see when it comes out of your body. So it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, well, this explains a lot. It's like people want to see, giant worms come out to justify all the pain and suffering they went through.
Yeah.
But you have to realize that you cannot go after parasites if there's no way for those toxins to get out. Because when you kill off parasites in your body, there's this term in the functional medicine world called herxing or die off
Mhm.
symptoms, or in, layman's terms, a detox reaction. When you kill parasites in your body, they release a ton of toxins into your system. It's kind of like their last dying breath of just like, well, fine, you're going to kill me. I'm just going to try to kill you on my way out. Yeah, they're little stinkers that way, but it's just they're so crazy smart and just they evade the immune system so well that first of all, if you don't have a way for toxins to get out of your body, if you're not pooping 2 to 3 times a day, if your liver's not functioning well, if your gallbladder isn't killing off those infections in your small intestine as your food goes from your stomach into that small intestine, then it's going to be a really bad day for you. You're going to get sick. And I've heard this from so many people, Dr. Brooke, that, oh, I tried this parasite cleanse that was, maybe a week or 3 weeks long or a month long, and I ended up in the ER,
Oh,
or now I have stomach pain, or now I have migraines, or I got flu-like symptoms for a month. And it's because your body, if it can't get toxins out, they're just going to circulate throughout the whole system. Your body's going to actually use your lungs, your kidneys, and your skin to detox for you. So that's why so many people get skin reactions and skin issues,
mhm.
after
Yeah.
improperly detoxing, where they'll get hives or eczema or oh, I didn't used to have this rash and now I have this huge rash over my abdomen or my liver or my back. And it's because you have to have a good way to get waste products out of your system before you go
Mhm.
after any infections. And so this is the number one thing I tell people. I did not start with a parasite cleanse. My doctor, she worked on healing my leaky gut, getting my gallbladder to function again, and then we went after parasites. You have to go in layers, right? You can't just put
Absolutely.
someone yeah, you can't just put someone on a systemic binder that's going to pull stuff out of their brain and send it to their liver. And so there's this order that I always tell people. It's, you have this drainage funnel. Think about a drain in a bathtub. You have all these toxins that can build up in your body unless you have good gut function. You're pooping 2 to 3 times a day. There's no leaky gut. There's no inflammation. There's no infections that are damaging that gut lining and
Mhm.
preventing waste from getting out. You have good gallbladder function and good liver function. So your liver is what pulls toxins from your bloodstream, breaks them down, it makes them non-toxic and sends them to your gut to go out in the toilet. Now, if you're constipated, if you have leaky gut, and the best way you know if you have leaky gut is if you have food sensitivities that you did not have as a kid. So if you're all of a sudden sensitive to gluten and dairy and you didn't have that as a child, you probably should not be doing any sort of detoxing unless you're working with someone who knows what they're doing, because you've really got to fix the gut and the liver and the gallbladder before killing off systemic infections. And so what I like to do and what you do, and any functional medicine doctor who really understands this concept, is that we have to basically drain that funnel. So we got to basically take the drain out of the bathtub, allow that water to go down the drain so it doesn't overflow and flood our whole house, right? And so it's the same thing
Yes.
with your body. If you don't pull those toxins out, they're just going to keep going and going and going. And everyone kind of has a threshold of what they can handle in terms of toxicity. And when you go beyond that threshold, all of a sudden, I can't go to the bathroom anymore. I'm bloated every time I eat. I have acid reflux. I can't sleep. I have
Mhm.
insomnia. My energy tanks now, because all these systems work together where if those drainage pathways get plugged up, now your body's going to try to use your kidneys to detox. So I've seen people with kidney stones that disappear after supporting liver and gut function. I've seen,
Mhm.
people who get up to pee all the time, even though they don't drink water before going to bed. People with chronic UTIs, and then the lungs and the skin will also start to react. So now you get people who say, oh, I had asthma as a kid, was fine for about a decade, and now all of a sudden I have trouble breathing, when it's too hot out or when I go exercise or things like that. That's your body trying to use an organ system to detox for you that it's not supposed to be doing. So, a lot of people will say, and I'm sure they've said this to you, a lot of the trolls on the internet of, well, I have a liver and a kidney. I don't need to do a detox. That's pseudoscience. And I'm just
Oh my
like,
god.
yeah, if they're functioning well, but most people's
Yeah.
are not. If you only have a 60% capacity to remove toxins from your body, you're going to have a really hard time actually functioning, because
Mhm.
eventually that stuff's going to build and build and build. And even if you're on a low tox, oh, all the products in my house are low tox. How do I have high toxicity? Well, every cell in your body produces waste on a daily basis. So you also
Yeah.
have to get that waste out of your system. And
Yeah.
so that's what I tell people is you've got to heal those organs first. I will target it as, okay, if someone has parasites, we're going to heal the gut first. We're going to support liver and gallbladder function if that's an issue as well. We're going to go after the gut parasites first, and then a little more systemic, maybe get some liver flukes out, and then we'll go after systemic ones, because you've got to go in a certain order so that you don't release a bunch of toxins and have nowhere for them to go. And so it's basically like taking a bathtub that's full and just dumping a bunch of extra water on it and wondering why your whole bathroom floods and now you have mold issues and you got to replace the tiles and all this stuff. That's what happens in your body if you do a parasite detox too soon. So hopefully that made sense.
Oh my gosh, that made total sense. Thank you for sharing that. That was so beautiful. And yet I was like, amen, 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 amen to everything you were saying, because it's so true. There's a proper order to do things in. You don't just jump in, and things that I work with my patients on as well is really unraveling the pieces in the body's order. So it's the order of operation in which things is done is so key. I love the analogy when you said if the bathtub is full and you're just dumping more water into it, you're going to create more problems like mold and all these other issues. It brings me back to something you said in your story when you talked about the 8 or 9 years after everything had happened, and you had that triggering event. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden you had all this joint pain and all this inflammation and on the verge of autoimmunity. And that's what happens essentially when the body has too much stuff coming at it and it can't clear it. It can't get it out fast enough or faster than what's coming in. And you brought up a really good point about the toxicity, people thinking that, well, my liver and my kidneys are functioning, and I'm air quoting that for those people who are listening, well, without realizing that your cells do create waste products every single moment. They're working, they're doing stuff, there's free radicals flying around. We've got to quench all that kind of stuff. So it's not about putting people on detoxes forever or having to do this like, well, it's January, so now it's time for a gut cleanse when there's a lot of things going on to get everything cleared out to help support your body so that you could keep going and doing your day-to-day stuff that you normally do. So I thought that was beautiful. The one thing I want to say about the liver too, for those listening who may not understand this, is your liver is processing 500 different jobs. And people think about the
Mhm.
liver as just like a detox. And I know you're not
Yep.
saying this, Dr. Kate, but I think a lot of people think of the liver as just a detox organ. That guy is literally clearing hormones, excess hormones out of your body, helping make hormones, helping keep your blood sugar stable. It is doing so many things that if it's taxed in some way or another, it's going to be taxed in a lot of other ways. So if it's having a hard time processing alcohol because you're drinking a lot of alcohol, and I don't mean to be on a tangent right here really quick, but if it's processing that alcohol, it is not doing any of the detoxing that Dr. Kate is talking about. It is like putting all that on pause so it can get that through the system because it's so toxic for the body. I digress.
Yeah.
I know that was a total tangent there, but it's so important to know like how alcohol can affect the body.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's so important too because you're right. It's not just a detox organ. It also
Yeah.
produces digestive enzymes. So if you're having trouble digesting your food, if you get bloating in your upper abdomen every time you eat, it could be liver dysfunction, could be gallbladder. That's why we have to do
Absolutely.
testing and see what's going on. And also back to the parasite question, because I think this is another really important piece. And like you said, yes, you should not be detoxing forever. It should be like a short protocol to heal the organs, because
Yeah.
once the organs heal, if you heal your gut, 80% of your immune system lives in your gut. Your immune
Mhm.
system is going to be on
Mhm.
now. So now when you're exposed to parasites, when you're exposed to bacteria or viruses, you're able to actually handle it so it doesn't build up in your system.
Yes. Yes.
Stuff takes decades to get
Yes.
to the point where you have a 3-foot parasite in your intestine. That's not normal, you guys. I have yet to have a patient who's had a bigger parasite than I did come out of their intestine in their
Ooh.
stool, basically. And so just know this is not the norm. And it's
Yeah.
just definitely the most sexy thing on Instagram right now is like parasite cleanses because you can see them. When you clear
Yeah.
out a viral infection or bacteria, you don't see anything. It's just like, oh, I
Right.
hope I'm healing.
Yeah.
But that is a really important thing to talk about. And also, you have to look at co-infections and other
Mhm.
toxins in the body because there are certain co-infections and toxins like heavy metals that will allow parasites to continue to proliferate and overgrow in your
Yes.
body. And if you only target one thing, if you don't do any testing to see, okay, do I also have mold toxicity or fungal overgrowth or dysbiosis in my gut, which just means an overgrowth of bacteria
Mhm.
in the gut, those opportunistic infections that happen, you're never going to fully get rid of the parasites. And so I had to look at the full picture, and that's what my doctor did is she focused on healing the organs, removing the gut parasites first, getting my microbiome restored, getting rid of the fungal infections in the gut, and then we went after liver flukes, and then we went after systemic parasites. And it was this stepwise, healing process
Mhm.
that if you don't understand what you're doing, you're really going to mess yourself up. And that's why so many people will end up going to their doctor with worse issues after a detox, or they'll end up in the ER. And now you get doctors saying, oh, detoxing is dangerous. It's like, no, no, no. Uneducated detoxing in the wrong order is dangerous. And so that's
Yeah,
kind of my biggest thing.
I would even go on a limb and say unguided detox can be very dangerous. So
Yep.
it is so important. You did not jump into your detox protocols without that guidance that you had with your friend who was the doctor to walk you through that. So
Exactly.
we're not saying that you have to be lifetime patients and you're just going to be stuck in our patient wheel and our patient. That is not it. Guidance is important for a time and
Mhm.
then getting you to the point where you can be released.
Exactly. And everyone's different. I have some patients who literally feel 100% better after a month of working together. Now, that doesn't happen often,
Yeah.
and then some people might take 6 to 8 to 9 months to feel back to normal. I felt 100% better after 4 months of working with this doctor. And
Okay.
but
Yeah.
I was still passing parasites for 6 months. So even though I felt better, I knew there was still deeper healing that I had to do. and I had to continuously heal my gut. The leaky gut took actually like a year and a half to fully heal and not show up on testing anymore. The fungal infection took over a year, even though all my symptoms were gone. And so this is the thing too, is you shouldn't rely on just symptoms to tell you when your body is messed up. Like there are warning signs
Amen.
that happen, and you could be completely asymptomatic
Oh
and
my gosh.
have zero symptoms, but be the most unhealthy person on testing. And so that's another thing too, is look for co-infections, look for toxins, because those will tank your immune system and allow the parasites to come back. And also don't just rely on, oh, I don't have any gut issues, my gut's probably fine. No, get some testing done, make sure, because the gut is the root of pretty much all chronic diseases. If you don't start there, if you don't make sure it's healthy, if you don't fix it before it gets to a point like I was at, where I was almost on the verge of getting an autoimmune disease, it could be really bad later on. And so that's something I tell people too. I love when people reach out to me and they're like, hey, I don't have any health issues, but I really want to learn how to do a detox safely and I want to prevent future complications. That is the mindset that we should all have around health in our body.
Absolutely. And because this podcast is called Your Body Speaks, I love teaching people, this idea of being able to tune into certain signals. Dr. Kate is making a great point here about, just understanding the gut. You can have no symptoms. You could be not feeling anything. But if we really kind of tune in, there's certain things that may be happening, like a little headache brewing or a little ache in the belly after you eat something. Your body's telling you something that maybe that meal that you just ate is just like, no, I didn't need to have that. Or like you were saying, there was deeper leaky gut issues or deeper gut issues that need to be looked at. Physical symptoms are not a determiner of whether you're well or not. And I always say that a lot too, is you can have no symptoms and your body be a complete wreck internally, all angry and knotted up, so pissed off or not working at the same energetic level. And I'm going to say something, Kate, and I think you agree, but I really get frustrated when people say it's just because I'm getting older.
Oh God.
And while there are some things that may be attached to aging, where muscles or things like that, but it is not a factor of your age. It's a factor of the function of your body internally and how healthy it is.
Yep.
I'm 41 years old. I know that I don't experience a lot of problems that some 35-year-olds experience, and they're saying that they're getting old. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got 6 years on you, and you're telling me you're getting old. That is not at all the issue.
Yeah, that's such a good point. You're not old until your 60s or 70s. So people
There
who
you go.
if you go to a doctor and you're 32 and they're like, well, you're just getting older, go find a different doctor, please. Because that is not old. You are still young, 30s, 40s, 50s. Even Dr. Brook's husband does not look his age because he takes care of himself. He
Yeah.
looks so young compared to,
Yeah.
the age that he actually is.
Yeah.
Because you can really, if you really just heal your body from the inside out, like you talked about earlier, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, if you hit all four of those pillars of health, you're going to feel incredible no matter what age you're at.
Yes. So good. Okay. Shifting off of that a little bit. And I know we talked about this, we hit this a lot, or you talked about it a lot, but there are a lot of women, and I'm sure a lot of women listening right now, that have tried so many different diets, tried so many different detoxes, or all the different supplements. In your opinion, what would be the one or a couple reasons why you feel those shifts aren't happening for them?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because the second thing people try after diet is supplements. So, and you have to realize, you guys, your gut is where absorption takes place. So if you have leaky gut, if you've got an inflamed gut lining, if your bacteria in your gut are overgrowing in ways that they should not, if you have fungal overgrowth, parasites, mold toxicity, heavy metals, lots of pesticide residue built up in your system that's damaging your gut lining, you can't absorb anything you're putting in your body. And so what I've seen with people, especially the people I work with, because they've done everything you said, they did diet, they did supplements, maybe they just tried like a short cleanse, but didn't do any testing first. So, they just assume nothing's going to work for them. You have to get a full picture, because number one, if your liver and your gallbladder aren't functioning, you can't digest your food into small enough pieces to be absorbed by the body. And then number two, if that gut lining is damaged, you can't absorb anything. And so you could be putting all the right food in your body, all the right supplements, the best supplement products out there. And you're like, oh, the supplement didn't work for me. No, your body just couldn't absorb it and it couldn't utilize those nutrients in it. You're just creating really expensive pee and really expensive poop. And so that's what I tell people. We've got to rebuild from the foundation. We've got to get you able to make digestive enzymes, produce enough stomach acid, digest your food in the small intestines by releasing bile salts from your gallbladder, and actually be able to absorb those nutrients in your gut lining before putting people on supplements or talking about food as medicine, because food as medicine doesn't work for most people, especially in America. You can go to Europe and you'll probably use food as medicine and heal very quickly. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, we're exposed to so much garbage, even produce and the good quality foods in America. Even those are still tainted with garbage, as they travel across the US. Now, luckily, we're in California. We don't have this problem, but because most of the produce comes from California to everywhere else. But as your produce travels, they'll treat it with gases to preserve it. They'll spray stuff on
Yes.
it to make sure it doesn't go bad before it reaches its destination. So even if you're buying the best quality food, you're still being poisoned. And so it's this nonstop cycle. But it's not to be afraid to eat non-organic food or to eat bread. It's just, how can we heal your organs, get your immune system back online, and get your detox pathways working at 100% so that
Mhm.
when you're exposed to that stuff, it doesn't wreck your body. And so that's the biggest thing that I tell people in terms of why diet and supplements don't work for them.
So good, Kate, because it is really about, well, we've said this a lot on the episode today about healing internally so that you can be able to eat certain things, not having to live your life in such a very, very, very constricted kind of way where it's just like, was that cooked on a pan that touched bread? I can't use it. That kind of extreme, right? And
Yeah.
so we want to heal from the inside out, but we also know with the intelligence that God designed within the body that the body is extremely resilient. And so when we do heal those organs, when we do get everything cleaned up, we do become more resilient to handle different things, right? To be able to, like you said, to not have fear to like, well, it wasn't an organic apple, so I ate it and now I'm tanking and going, no, 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 no. That's not what we're saying. We're saying you can handle that kind of stuff. But if you've hit the threshold, if your bathtub is full and you're just throwing more toxicity in there with
Yep.
more non-organic produce or foods that are just toxic heavy, right? You're
Yeah.
just going to make that a bigger mess. Also, one thing I want to say, and I'll add on to that expensive pee and expensive poop. One thing I tell my patients as well is not only do you have to spend money for those supplements and have expensive pee and poop, but your body has to utilize energy to process all that. So now you've taken energy reserves away from your immune system being able to be stronger, away from your gut being able to heal and do all these things by taking supplements that aren't really super supportive for you in this moment. So it's really important, again, with guidance and then understanding what's working for your body because you're learning to listen to it. So, yeah,
Yeah,
that was great.
that is such a good point, because you're right. Back to what you said about the liver earlier. Everything you put in your body, good or bad, your liver has to process all the extra
Yes.
ingredients in it. So every supplement you'll notice has, even the good quality ones, they still have extra ingredients in there to preserve it, to make sure it gets past your stomach acid, to make sure it
Yep.
gets into your body. Your liver has to break down all of that extra stuff in the supplement and get it out of your system. So if you're
Yeah.
someone who has a grocery bag full of supplements, or the graveyard in your kitchen cupboard of, these 100 supplements you bought, and maybe you've tried 50 of them, and, you're taking 20 supplements a day, you're putting so much stress on your liver. If your liver isn't functioning well, you're going to put so much stress on your kidneys, and you're going to put
Yes.
so much stress on your gut, thinking that, oh, all supplements are good for you. They're not. And so,
Right.
you really have to be so specific with what you give people. And anyone who works with me, when we start a detox, I always tell them, any supplement you're taking, and if it doesn't give you significant improvements in your symptoms, we're going to cut it out while you're detoxing, because I don't want you stressing out your organs. We want to actually heal them.
There you go. Yeah. No more stress on the organs. So good.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's huge. Okay, so there are so many different, we talked about Instagram and social media and all the things. Like we are inundated with so much information, which is both a good and a bad thing, right? Yes, you can quickly go online and find what supplement would be good for a bacterial infection or what would be most helpful. That's great, but there is a lot of information out there that isn't good. What are one or maybe three different things that you wish women would delete from their brain forever in regards to these like health?
Yeah, that is such a good question, because I see this so much. And obviously, we hear it from the people around us so much.
Yeah.
The number one thing, you guys, the biggest red flag I will ever tell you to watch out for. If you see someone on the internet saying this one product will heal everyone who has this one
Mm,
issue, run screaming in the opposite direction, because that is
that's
so
a good
far from the
point.
truth. You know, our bodies are so unique. We only differ by about what 1% in our DNA, but we look so different externally. Imagine how
Mhm.
different our internal environment functions from person to person.
Yeah.
And so you really have to think about that is what works for me isn't going to work for someone else. If you line
Mhm.
up 10 of the people I've worked with who had chronic constipation, they all had different care plans because they all had
Mhm.
different organ function. They all had different infections, different toxins in their body, different mental health states, different self-talk, going back
Yeah.
to, different spiritual walks with
Yeah.
God or no
Right.
spiritual walk. And so there's all these different factors that you have to consider. Everything in the body works like a symphony. You can't just have the drums playing and expect to have a good harmony at a symphony that you go to at a concert. If somebody's like, messing up in the flute section, you're going to hear it. And so that's how the body works too. Is if you don't work on every section in that symphony, because the gut is related to so many different organs in your body, if you don't look at everything, you're going to miss a huge piece of the puzzle. And you may
Mhm.
see slight results for a little bit of time. And then all of a sudden you plateau or you regress back to where you were because you didn't look at the full picture. And you, just like you said earlier, people with hormone issues, because the liver is the main organ that breaks them down, that is the number one thing that I work on healing with people. I have so many people who are like, well, do you do hormone testing? And oh, we got to attack the hormones. And I'm like, no, no, no. Your hormones are regulated in the gut and the liver. Let's
Yes.
heal those organs first. Then let's see if there still are
Yeah.
hormone issues left over. I can tell you that maybe 70-80% of the time, once you heal those two organs, people's hormone issues disappear. Their periods regulate. They have no more
Yeah.
hormonal acne. They don't have painful periods anymore. They don't have all those things associated with it. And so it's really just about looking at the full picture, not going off of this one supplement will heal all of your ailments, or, oh, if you just do a parasite cleanse, it'll fix all your issues. That is so far from the truth, you guys. I didn't just have parasites, like I mentioned earlier. I had mold
Yeah.
toxicity, fungal
Right.
overgrowth, leaky gut, gallbladder dysfunction. And there's so many things going on in the body that you have to look at everything. And so those are the top two things that I would say is just look at the full picture, get some testing done, work with someone who knows what they're doing. Because the point of working with someone like Dr. Brook or myself is so that we can shortcut the process for you. So you don't have to do what I did and struggle for almost a decade before you find answers, because
Oh
that
my
was
gosh.
so frustrating and so painful. And I wish I'd found someone sooner. And I totally ignored the doctor who fixed my gut. He told me, Kate, I'm pretty sure you have parasites. You need to go get tested. But the stool test was negative. And that happens a lot, you guys. You'll see
Yes.
so many negative stool
Yes.
tests and think to yourself,
Yes.
oh, I guess I don't have parasites.
Yes.
I was so infested, you guys. I had hundreds of them come out. And so you've got to listen to other doctors. I told him, oh, no, my stool test is negative. I'm fine. And then, 8 years later, 9 years later, passing hundreds of different parasites, all different shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
Those would be the top two things I would say. I know I went off on a tangent, but hopefully it was helpful. So.
No, you did not go on off on a tangent, but I was like, I want to interject and I want to say, so Kate, you're saying birth control is not the solution to hormone problems?
Birth control
No.
creates so many gut issues in people. Like, I cannot tell you
Oh
how
my
many people's
gosh.
guts are wrecked after decades of using birth control.
I
It's so
Isn't it
bad.
so crazy? I know
It's so
we're like
terrible.
in our little doctor bubble right now, but it is
Yeah.
insane the amount of things that just get basically slapped on like a band-aid. Doctor spends 5 minutes in a room with a patient and they're 17 years old and they're having major acne issues and the doctor's like, "Well, let's get you on birth control because that's the solution," right? And it's just like, "Oh my goodness." But
Yeah.
I totally digress there. And one of the things that you were saying when you were sharing that about, running in the other direction, if they're saying, "Hey, this one thing is going to solve everything." That is such a good point because there's so much more going on in the background that you really do need to address. And also, you said that that first interaction with that first doctor and he said, "Hey, I think you have parasites." And you're like, "Oh, my stool test came back." This is something I speak on so heavily and I am so not anti lab work. I am so not anti testing. I think testing and labs is so important, but it's also more important to make sure you're getting the right testing done. That's why guidance is important with
Mhm.
like a trained practitioner because you can end up like in this situation that Dr. Kate was talking about where everything looks great. Oh, all my numbers look great. Well, also getting those labs read by somebody who has the eyeball to see certain things, because you're going to have a doctor and go, "Oh, well, you're all within range." Oh my gosh, you're within range of what? A 60-year-old man who's 300 pounds and you're
Yeah.
a 25-year-old woman who's 115 pounds? Like,
Yep.
goodness gracious, the standards are so bad.
And those standards were just tested on young, healthy men back in
Yeah,
like the 60s and 70s. There were
thank
no
you.
women who were tested
No,
back then
no.
to create these standards that we have.
No, even though standards for hormone tests are all been done on men. And how crazy is that when we're looking at estrogen, progesterone, all
Yeah,
those things? But I'm like totally on a different tangent. But obviously, there's some brokenness in the medical field and in the healthcare system. We know this. We're not here to be banging a hammer or an axe against them, but we're just sharing with you guys that there is another way of doing things.
absolutely. And I just want to add on to that too, because I feel like there is a lot of bashing of medical doctors nowadays
Hmm.
because of, the wave of functional medicine and naturopathy that's, becoming more mainstream, which is awesome because, this is where real health actually takes place.
Yeah.
But like no MDs, like one of my good friends from, we grew up together and from middle school on, and she's an MD. There are so many amazing MDs out there who are doing
Yes.
integrative medicine programs now, who are going into functional medicine. We're always texting each other because I'll ask her medical questions. She'll ask me like, "Oh, what supplement would you use for XYZ?" just to get them kind of on the right path. And so just know that, your doctors, they genuinely want to help you. They went to medical school for a reason, to help people. It's not their fault that the whole
Hmm.
system has been taken over by pharmaceutical medicine. And you can see this in research. Most of those studies are funded by big pharma companies who have a vested interest in the outcome. And so any trauma that you have in your life, the number one place I'm going is the hospital. I want an MD to work on me. I'm not
Amen.
going to go to a chiropractor if I'm bleeding out of my abdomen and say, "Hey, can you help me?" So any trauma medicine, the medical system excels in
Yes.
surgery, in trauma-based
Yes.
medicine, and ER stuff. That is the number one place I'm going if I ever have any issues like that, because that is where they excel. But when we're talking about long-term health, it's way too much symptom management now with pharmaceutical drugs or surgeries that maybe people don't need, like getting your gallbladder removed. Do not do
Mhm.
that. Please God, keep your
Mhm.
gallbladder at all costs if you can, because it's not
Mhm.
just digesting fats, it's doing so many other functions in your body.
Yeah. So good. So, so good. Okay, we're running out of time, but I wanna make sure we get to the last final, questions. My question that I ask guests on this show all the time, because it is called Your Body Speaks, is what is one way you personally have experienced your body speaking to you? Or have you seen in patient care?
Man, that's a good question. So personally, I mean, obviously I'm a gut specialist. So I'm all about the gut. But I mean, in terms of like you and I, we're both Christians. I know that
Yes.
like gut feelings that I have and the way that I'm in tune with my body is with the Holy Spirit. Like God is always highlighting the right path for us. Even
Yeah.
says that in the Bible that he will guide our steps, even though we have our
Mhm.
whole life planned out for ourselves, he'll guide those
Mhm.
steps. So for me, it's always a gut feeling about stuff. And I know it's hard for people to think about becoming in tune with their body and trying to figure out what their body needs, but it's really just this sense of peace that I get whenever I'm trying to make a decision about my health. Like, oh, okay, every once in a while I get the constipation that comes back, but I know what the triggers are. I'm like, okay, how stressed have I
Mhm.
been? Have I done any grounding recently? Have I been hydrating enough?
Mhm.
Have I been maybe eating some foods that I shouldn't have? Have I gone outside of the 80-20 rule and gone more into the 50-50 rule? Which this time of year is so hard. You're going to potlucks and
Oh.
parties and have to do the best you can. And just know, guys, that you can get to the point where you're not worried about eating that stuff in moderation. But if you're in that
Mhm.
healing process where you're really sick, you've got to be really, really diligent about what you put in your body for a period of time. And again, that period of time is different for everyone until you
Mhm.
can fully heal and actually eat the things that you want to eat. But yeah, I'd say for me, it's just really just that gut feeling and that sense of what is good for me and what's not. So I guess that's kind of the best way I could explain that.
That's a beautiful way of explaining it, and we have that internal, "Hey, turn left, turn right," or things like that where we don't listen
Yeah.
to it sometimes, or it tells us, "This relationship is not gonna be the greatest for me, but I'm gonna, like, walk into it anyways," right? Like, we get those gut,
It's
like, instincts that
like
come
walking
up,
into
so that's, like,
oncoming traffic.
such a great way of putting it. I love that, Kate. That was beautiful. Tell our listeners, tell those that are listening how they can find you, what you have to offer them, all the fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Brooke, for having me on the podcast. I'm glad we
Yeah.
didn't get too sarcastic with each other. I feel like we're both so nerdy that we're probably not going to deviate from talking about medicine and healing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, you asked great questions. I loved our conversation. So thank you so much for having me on
You're
the
welcome.
podcast. And I'll just say, if you're listening to this episode thinking, I can't even imagine what it would be like to go to the bathroom every day or to not be bloated all the time or to be able to go out to eat and not be suffering for days after. Or maybe you've thought to yourself, I've already tried so many things. What if nothing works? Maybe I'm too far gone. I just want to encourage you to do one of two things. Number one, again, my name's Dr. Kate Davis. So go to my Instagram. It's at Dr. Kate Davis. So that's DrKateDavis. And I know it'll be in the show notes below as
Mhm.
well if you guys forget that or if you're driving and you can't write it down. But go on there because I post daily content on how to move the needle forward and healing your gut and getting your health back on track. And so I post a lot of the stuff we talked about today about how to calm down your nervous system and all those simple things that you can start implementing today to start getting some results. And, maybe if you're someone who's like, hey, I really just am looking for someone to work with, I don't want to deal with this stuff anymore. I'm offering an exclusive discount to work with me for anyone who's listening to this podcast. If you go to my Instagram, again, that's at Dr. Kate Davis, and you DM me the number 100, I will give you $100 off on an initial consult and labs combo, which means you'll basically get the initial consult for free. And then we'll do labs to see exactly what's going on in your body. So just like we talked about earlier, you'll get a full picture of exactly what is creating the chronic gut issues that you're dealing with. Which drainage pathways aren't functioning well, what infections do you have, what toxins are lurking in your body. And then I'll put together, an individualized detox and lifestyle care plan specifically suited to you so that you can finally heal and not end up in the ER in the process. And, just one last thing that I'll leave with your audience. I've seen so many people heal, you guys, like myself included, from IBS, from constipation, from bloating, acid reflux, and most of them were in the same boat as you. They tried diet, they tried supplements, got no results, wondered if anything would ever work for them or if it would just be another waste of money. But let me just tell you that healing is absolutely possible. When you
Mhm.
give it the right environment to thrive in, your body will heal itself. God designed us to be healing,
Yes.
for our bodies to heal
Yes.
if it's given the right environment. So just know that I've seen complete transformations when we get to the root cause and we heal at a foundational level in the body, healing those organs, removing the things that shouldn't be there. And so don't ever give up on finding an answer. It's out there.
Kate, so beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. We did have a lot of fun. And yeah, you're right. We geeked out a
Yeah.
lot together. So awesome. Well, we will see you on the next episode, listeners. Bye.